Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the CCS Conference Call After Dark podcast. I'm back with co-host Somber. It's week 2 of the podcast, episode 2. It's time to break down all things week 2 and look ahead to week 3 here. Again, CCS season 7 is in full force this fall.
I've been keeping tabs on the score updates as they've come through the reporting channel, and I took a quick look through kind of what happened, maybe things I looked over, but it's been a pretty eventful week here with some big surprises through week 2. And I mean, from what we saw in non-conferences, to be expected with some close results throughout, some surprising results throughout as well. But yeah, it's been a nice week to kick off for conference play, and I'm looking forward to kind of going through what we have in store for next week, as well as kind of going over the highs and lows of last week as well.
A lot of close games across the last week of CCS. Notably, I mean, Idaho knocking off ranked Northern Arizona was pretty interesting to see happen, and they got close last season in the Big Sky Tournament final, but they got the job done this fall, Summer, and what a way to start their season.
Yeah, I mean, in convincing fashion too, a 3-1 in your best of 5 to start your conference play. That gives you a lot of momentum going through. I know Idaho, they kind of bounced back. I guess they had a slow start to last season, and then ultimately, their series against NAU. I feel like NAU kind of has put themselves as the top dog of that conference, but taking the whole season off with a bang, taking a 3-1 victory over them was quite shocking. I also saw that NIU took it to 5 against Akron Gold in week 1 of their conference play, so that was another huge result that I saw come through. And I think that out in the MAC, there's a lot of tough competition now. Ball State, with their new roster additions, they're still lossless through the opening week. They're 6-0 throughout their first 2 games. Ball State's looking great. NIU being able to keep it close week 1, when we know NIU is a roster that turns it up late season and turns it up when it comes to national play. So the MAC's looking very strong as well. But I mean, I think that and the NAU loss were my 2 biggest surprises throughout this opening week of conference play.
Yeah, I'm not too shocked at the Akron result, honestly. I mean, again, NIU's always, for whatever reason, played Akron close. Whether, I don't know if Akron is necessarily, maybe not at full strength yet, or maybe not into, full gear quite yet this fall, but nonetheless, it's still a heck of a result for NIU. But Idaho beating NIU is probably the shock of the week, I'd assume. That's a pretty big time win.
Yeah, I think also Akron Gold, you were bound to keep a series close, especially after the non-conference that they had, where they didn't drop a single game against some. I believe their only opponents were in the top 5, top 10 at least in the ranking. So you went undefeated, didn't drop a single game in your non-conference. So then some of that luck kind of wore off, I guess, going into conference play. But you still came out with a win. But yeah, man, like Idaho coming out, Weber State currently sitting at the top of their conference with being 2-0, and they're 6-0 through their games as well. But I think Idaho is another one of those teams. Like I said, they kind of stumbled to start off last season. They warmed up. They looked really good. They looked in form heading through their conference playoffs. But NAU is kind of the big bad boogeyman out in their conference. So to take them down in the regular season means that you have some legs to stand on when it comes to conference playoff time, and you can make a deep run here for Idaho. But yeah, again, I think I have to agree with you. That's the biggest shocker of the week. Everything else kind of played out business as usual. We saw a couple other interesting results, but nothing to that big of a surprise where it's a 3-1 kind of handling of the top dog from your conference.
There was another result I was kind of shocked to learn about, but last Tuesday, I went to the Rangers game, so my phone service was absolutely horrid for a couple hours that night. So I got out of the game and checked my phone finally when I had service again, and I saw that BYU swept Houston. I thought that was a little interesting, and then I saw Michigan State beat Indiana, ranked Indiana, by the way, in Game 5. So I thought that was also very crazy to see. Those are 2, I guess, upsets for me, but BYU over Houston is probably one of the better wins, as BYU's been struggling in the Big 12 the last couple of years, and finally picking off Houston's a great win for the Cougars. But the Michigan State win, I mean, what a win for the Spartans that was.
Yeah, I mean, Big Ten looks increasingly more competitive. I know it's Michigan State's B team academy roster. I don't know what their official terminology is for it, but this is the roster that is not Pop Bomb, Morvo, and Drew. Uh, so them going into Indiana, who is a team that makes deep playoff runs, they're in the postseason consistently. They're usually, favorites coming out of the Big Ten. I think that them, Maryland, Purdue, Penn State, those are kind of your consensus top four. So coming out in week one, and again, really nitty gritty game. Win all five, but you came out victorious on the other end of it. I think that's a great way to start their season off. And I think that again, even if it is the B team, I think Michigan State has such a great program that they're going to be able to develop to be one of the top dogs and kind of be uh, inching their way up into that conversation of top four and maybe knocking off a team like Indiana or a team like Purdue if Purdue's not able to perform to the same level that we've come to expect from Purdue, making a little bit of a roster change, keeping it through the summer now into the fall, but now not having Enchanted on the squad. There's still some question marks about consistency and where Purdue's going to end up, but Big Ten came out with a big time result with Michigan State, and they're making things interesting at the top end there.
I mean, the Big Ten in the Big 12 battle in the non-conference went 9-1 against the Big 12. So I think they proved their dominance that they're here to play this fall, and that was the first time the Big Ten ever beat the Big 12 in that challenge. It took them 4 seasons to get it done, but they finally did win in a dominant fashion as well. And Frost makes a good point in chat. Northeastern Black taking Drexel to Game 5 respectively, so I dropped them in my top 25 ballot this week, which maybe we'll drop it tomorrow. Hopefully people can get their lists in, but there will not be a ranking tonight. Hopefully tomorrow, but I dropped Drexel in my ballot after looking at that result. Again, they struggled this summer. I chalked it up to, okay, this team's not trying. They just don't care now that it's the summer. It's whatever. But now this fall, you're back to the normal standards. What Drexel Rocket League is what we're used to in CCS, and it just hasn't been that same standard yet.
Yeah, Drexel is an interesting team to me. Watching through them throughout the summer, I had a very similar opinion of. I think a lot of the teams that you expected to do better throughout the summer, you can kind of chalk it up to, yeah, it's the summer. They're on low hours. They're doing this, that, and the third. They're not really like as locked in. But coming in here for Drexel, I had high expectations with them. You're switching out and you're bringing in guard. It is a new player. Maybe there's still some things to figure out, but with players like Zerf and Kevin, I have very high expectations just from them as a duo. They have such great offensive output that if you're able to kind of tamp down on that, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy that you're not able to get the job. That you're able to get the job done, but it takes you to 5 to do so. So very interesting to see how kind of Drexel is able to bounce back throughout this conference play.
I mean, Northeastern Black almost picked off Drexel in the summer too, so they had 2 straight chances to pick them off, but couldn't get it done. But that's still a hell of a result, I'd say, for the Northeastern Black squad. And there were a couple other interesting results across week 2, but nothing really too necessarily interesting. Maryland is quite dominant, beating Illinois, and then Illinois did bounce back against UCLA in a very close Game 5 series, but again, it was quite the week. I mean, there was a lot of really good games and a lot of, I guess, stunning results that I'm not really sure what happened, but, it's part of the season, and these teams picking up, quality wins, trying to give their team the best chance to play in the championships, which we'll get into later with an update.
Yeah, I think I also wanted to give some flowers to Arizona State. I think that there was a lot of focus. Yeah, I mean, especially with kind of the reemergence of Colorado, how they performed against Purdue in their non-conference. I kind of slept on Arizona State. I figured that Colorado was going to be like the team to beat out of the Big 12, but Arizona State showed that they're still at the top of that conference, especially with a very commanding 3-1 win over Colorado, who I was very high on going into the conference, into conference play. So for them to come out and have a big victory over them in the regular season, I think that it kind of put my worries to rest that Arizona State would be kind of butting heads with them, and it would be who's going to come out on top. It looked really good. I'm really happy to see that Arizona State's back. and they're playing at a high level and making that conference much more competitive because of it. Texas Tech also off to a hot start. I don't think that it's been a very long time since I've said that. Texas Tech looks really good. Arizona looks still very good. Same with Utah. I really like the results coming out of the Big 12 as well. Some interesting things out of the SEC with I believe it was Clemson. Clemson took a big win over someone, right?
They swept Louisville to start off
Yeah.
ACC play.
I think. Oh yeah.
And beat South Carolina.
Clemson. Yeah, Clemson. They look really good, despite them starting off 1-1. I think that Clemson still look really good. Clemson's one of those teams again where I think that they struggle to find things early, and they find big wins and then end up finding a way to lose against teams that they shouldn't be losing to. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes on Clemson. They're looking really good out of the ACC, and then Tennessee coming out and going 6-4 in their opening 2 games, but finding a way to stay unbeaten. Tennessee looks really good. Oklahoma coming out and being flawless through their first 2 series as well is very impressive to me, especially with their loss to Oklahoma State. I think that the SEC looks like they're going to be another very competitive team because we got Mizzou and Florida still in there. Texas A&M looked I'll say decent through non-conference, but I know that in the SEC, when it comes down to it, Texas A&M is one of those teams that they're always going to play up and play very competitively. So I think that we really have kind of I think that Florida and Missouri are still kind of your solid top 2, but that 3 through 5 spot can really be just whoever is feeling hot towards the end of the season to finish out the seeding. And as you talk about, championship play, you talk about the conference playoffs, seeding is going to matter a lot here for these teams.
That it is. And I think for me, when I look at the Big 12, and I'll go back to the start, I mean, Arizona State, what a story they've been in the last year in their first CCS full year of competition. And back in the fall in the preseason poll, I put Arizona State at 8. I got called absolutely insanely crazy for that. I was getting clowned by the whole entire selection committee for putting Arizona State 8. And lo and behold, the Sun Devils made the tournament that season, got to the Elite 8, lost to Colorado, who went on to make the Final Four and lose to Akron in 7. And again, top 8 for Arizona State. I had them 8 in the preseason poll, so I'll take my flowers on that one, Somber. But Arizona State's had quite the story. They looked dominant against Colorado last night. It was not pretty at all for the Buffaloes, and Arizona State starts off league play 1-0. And Arizona is Arizona. They're always going to be dominant. They struggled in the non-conference. We've seen top teams in the past struggle in the first week of the season, i.e. Akron from last season went on to win a 3rd straight national title, by the way. So I wouldn't panic if I'm Arizona. They've played tough competition. Florida's a tough game, obviously. I don't remember who the second loss was to, but they did go 0-2 in the first week. But Texas Tech, you mentioned as well. They had a great start, but again, for the last 2 seasons, I can't make up my mind if I think Texas Tech is mid or if I think they're good. I can't decide yet.
Yeah,
it's still too early. They got a new roster in the past spring. Their B team played this summer, but for me, it's too early. I can't tell if Tech is good or not. I can't tell if they're mid. It's still early for me. I need to see them play, better competition. But again, for me in the spring, they beat good teams, but they also lost to the very, very bottom of the Big 12. So I can't tell, if this team is serious yet or not.
Yeah, like I said, Texas Tech is one of those teams where, I see the 2-0 start. I see the +4 game differential. I want to say Texas Tech looks like they're on the rise, but, by the time week 4 comes around, they could still be, 2-2, 3-3, and those 3 losses are against teams that they should not be losing to. They could be against the TCU, UCF teams that they should not be losing these series to, and I need to see more consistency out of them before I put too much stake into them. But again, it feels like it's been a while for Texas Tech to look at their roster, look at their results through the first week of conference play, and say that they look good and be kind of happily surprised for that. So Texas Tech, another team that I'm going to keep my eyes on. Arizona State, I hope that they can keep up this pace when they start to get into the nitty gritty of their schedule, because if they're looking like this, late season, going into conference bracket play, going into your conference playoffs, going into national championship, they're going to be a very scary team because, like you said, top 8, only losing to Colorado, who ended up ultimately losing to the national champions of that season. I think that Arizona State has a really high ceiling, and we haven't really seen that full potential realized yet. They kind of get screwed over with seeding sometimes, where they end up playing a much harder matchup than they necessarily should have to play in a round 2 or a round 3, and they end up just barely missing out on progressing further. But I think that Arizona State, based off of what they've kind of been doing recently and with the new playoff structure, I think that they're primed for the most favorable seeding they've had up until now, if they can keep this trend going. I know it's only after 1 week of conference play, but they just look so good, man. I'm very high on Arizona State this season.
I am as well. I think they're going to have a good season, but for me in the Big 12, Texas Tech is a team to watch right now. I mean, they're undefeated. They beat UCF last night. I think they also beat someone that they easily should have beat. So they're 2-0, I think, in league play. I think they got slammed in the non-conference though. But Texas Tech has not played in the CCS championships at all ever. The only time they've ever made a postseason was season 2, and they got second place in the Big 12 and lost to Kansas in the first iteration of this Big 12 Conference League. And again, that was the very old Texas Tech roster with Chermo and Nasirium, and I think their third was, he's still on the team. I don't even remember what the guy's name is. I can't pull it up. I've seen so many different Texas Tech rosters. I've lost track of some of these older guys. But Chermo and Nasirium were a fun duo to watch, and I don't know why I can't remember who the freaking third was. It's actually pissing me off now. I don't remember who it was. Well, now I gotta go look.
It beats me. That's before my time, man. That's way before my time.
Now I have to go look and see who it was. Hold on. It was Bramble. Bramble was their third.
Bramble, yes.
He's still on the roster here, but we'll move forward. I mean, yesterday, Blast dropped the RLCS 2026 information, and CRL also was announced this past weekend. I mean, there's been quite the discourse on Twitter about CRL and what's changing this year, with only 8 teams making league play, and there's 2 splits of league play, and only the top 4 play in a double elimination championship bracket later on in the fall semester. And there's been quite the discourse on Twitter about that. So I guess I want to collect your thoughts. Before I get into that, though, RLCS dropped their information, they dropped their dates, and they pissed me off.
Always, of course, it's classic Blast. Just I understand that they dropped the dates for RLCS and CRL. I know that a lot of people in the collegiate space specifically are not happy with the dates and the formats and all that, because they conflict with so many other leagues, so many other events. But rightfully so, you're the main organizer of the esport. You don't have to care about everything else, but it would be nice to show that you're at least thinking about it. So I'm not too happy with the dates as well. So I'm on the same boat with you.
Well, for me, RLCS is starting November 14th, which is the first regional. In North America and Europe are going together for the first time ever. They've always split weekends for the last couple seasons, and they always taken turns on who goes first. And this past season, Europe went first, and the season before that, NA went first. The season before that, Europe went first. And so I thought, EU went first, so NA's going to go first. Then I saw that they're both going together on the opening weekend of the 14th to the 16th, which also happens to be the same weekend as the CCS Championships. And so with that, there was a change to our tournament. On the Friday, we'll have games kicking off at 9, 10, and 11 Eastern, with possibilities of midnight Eastern for West Coast matches. And then on Saturday, we'll run from 3 to 6 Eastern with 2 rounds like normal. And Sunday, we'll go from 3 to 5 Eastern on Championship Sunday. So we'll have some afternoon action this time instead of some late night action as we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I think I haven't looked at the actual dates and how are they going to continue to have NAEU be every single weekend paired together, or is it just the first split? Because I know that they're doing the studio LAN with NAEU, and that's going to be that's going to be technically after Regional 1. Okay, yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
I know that they're doing NAEU. They confirmed that it's just NA and EU at that studio LAN, and they're going to play out their regional to have it be their regional finalists, and the winner of a double elim bracket from that, it's whoever the top EU team is the EU regional. Yeah, I don't understand what they're doing. I wish that they would have just made it like an invite thing where it's like, hey, if you're top 6 after the regional, you then get flown out for the next weekend to do that, and then you alternate the weeks or whatever. And I don't know. It's all confusing. I love that there's another LAN. I love that people are going to get more LAN experience, even if it is just a studio LAN. I like the format in theory. I think that it's done very poorly, because having both NAEU, also for casters like us, who we are looking to do multiple regions, it really limits, the options that you have for that first regional of team streams of, hey, I may have two really good opportunities to do EU and NA, but now I have to pick and choose because it's all on the same day, and I may not be able to swing from 10 a.m. Eastern until 11 p.m. Eastern, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday doing both regions. And I think that it just puts people like us in awkward positions, and they didn't really think it through other than how are we going to make the studio LAN work the best for NA and EU players, rather than kind of seeing how it works for the overall scene. Which I think is the biggest frustrating thing to me. And then of course just the dates all along throughout the season. They conflict with so many events down the line. I'm sure that we're going to be stuck in another situation where we have 4 different collegiate LANs all going on at the same time, where they have to worry about the LAN plus regional leagues like CCS, SEL, wherever they're playing, and they're also going to have to worry about RLCS quals all in the same span of days. And I think that it's just they don't really take any into account any of those factors. They just kind of look at like the top pros and they're like, oh, the top pros all just play professionally and they stream, so we'll just put it for whatever dates that work for us. So it's disappointing to see that there isn't really any switch up from last season to this season, but I'm at least a fan of getting another LAN.
From my understanding, at the kickoff event, it's the top 6 from Open Qualifier 1 from North America and Europe. And then they play like a, I guess, quote-unquote super regional on LAN. In the top, I think it was 2 teams go to that double elimination bracket, or top 3 maybe, I don't know, maybe top 4 even, go play that double elimination bracket with Europe in a combination event in Copenhagen, Denmark, which is, again, a big city in Denmark and a very cool place as well. And now I spoke with Chipmunk Man, who runs the Bluegrass Boost Battle in Lexington, Kentucky, and apparently all 4 major fall LANs this fall are all now in what's the word? RLCS scheduled over them, is what I'm trying to say here. All 4 LANs were scheduled on top of, so now all these organizers have to deal with, not alone just their event, but also CRL and RLCS as well, alongside with me having to now worry about RLCS quals and the CCS championships running coincide, together. So it's going to be a tough semester to, work through. A schedule's being dropped on us at the last minute.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the big discourse with this new schedule is last season when we got the schedule release at Worlds. The following season of RLCS and CRL started in January. So there was at least a break or a gap from September to January where you got to work everything out and kind of reschedule things for the future and plan ahead for RLCS. Now that gap is now cut down to a month and a half because we start in early November. So that makes things even more frustrating because you went from having 4 months to now, hey, you now have 6 weeks before RLCS starts. Go ahead and reschedule everything, start hitting the DMs, start picking up the phone, make those calls, send those messages that you need to get everything fixed. And I think that's the part that is extra frustrating is, last season it was kind of it sucks, but we can move things around. We got plenty of time. And now it's like everyone is in panic mode because there was no communication that the season was going to be earlier. I think everyone was kind of operating off of the understanding that the new format starts in January and we are contained within a single calendar year. But that's not the case anymore. So it's extra frustrating that we have 6 weeks to try to figure all this stuff out for the entire year.
Yeah, I think if they're going to start the season this early, we should have known about this a long time ago.
Like, this should have been a major 2 announcement.
Like, these players, not alone just as an event organizer now, being effed over by Blast because they scheduled on top of my event this time, let alone I'm already pissed off at that. But, that's another story for another day. But, for these players, not only did Worlds just happen this past week, and then, finally, thank God, North America got it done for the first time in 6 years, but, these players, let alone they're professionals, they're on Blast schedule. They're not on their own schedule. They're competing on Blast schedule, not their own. And I think being given 6 weeks of an off season is a little bit crazy because you're let alone you're going to have about maybe 3 to 4 weeks from now to lock in your rosters and about 2 weeks to start really preparing and doing everything you need to do before the season starts. So it's not only you to build a roster and scrim, find teammates, try out whatever. It takes time to get all that done,
Yeah.
and let alone these organizations now have to sign these players in such a short amount of time to get all the legalities under the contract. And I think it's a little crazy to me that season starting literally 6-7 weeks from now. And that's not even, I'm not trying to make a joke, but 6-7. But yeah, nonetheless, it's dumb, and I'm dumbfounded by it all.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting reports today from Shift of roster mania already, and I think that you have to expect that teams that weren't at the World Championship have already kind of had their eyes on rosters and have already started tryouts and stuff. So I think that for the general bubble of each respective region, and especially in minor regions where you have limited land spots in the first place, I think that a lot of those behind the scenes roster moves and those tryouts have been happening for a while now. Because it's Major 2 was a while ago at this point. We had EWC as the most recent event before Worlds, so you've had an extra month and a half ish on top of these next 6 weeks to get your roster locked in. But now we're hearing that the Ultimates is expected to fully disband. So it's like you have 3 top NA players. Where are they going to go? Scribbles apparently is retired, which I have my own conspiracy theory about how that's the biggest rage bait in RLCS history. How the SSG is going to make a roster announcement and it'll just be Scribbles like with a painted on mustache or something. And we don't know what's going to happen with all these rosters that were just competing. And like you said, they have orgs that are backing them, and orgs who are dropping their rosters and are going to be looking to pick up free agent teams or looking to bring select duos back or a single player and build around them. Like with Gentlemates, they're apparently releasing everyone except for Juicy. Like even their coach is now an unrestricted free agent with Eversack. So it's like you have so much to do in so little time, and that's the extra frustrating part about it. And it's just all around. It's all around a very disappointing to see as a fan of the esport, and also someone who, I talk with a lot of the players, and this is probably the worst that they want out of an off season, is to have it be this quick of a turnaround from the announcement. If they stick with this, I think that it's much more manageable. But when everyone's operating under the assumption that it's going to be January, or you're operating under rumors that it might be sooner, you can't really start to lock in a team, because you may find better opportunities if you have an extra month and a half, 2 months going into a January start versus a November start. So it's all just very frustrating to see that we're going to see some cobbled together rosters. We're going to see some rosters that don't necessarily make sense to start out the season. And I think that this is where also we run into issues with not having a third split. I've always been a big advocate for having 3 splits for RLCS, because the third split is where teams who make the changes finally start to see themselves hit a good stride. So without having that, it's like you get to play the first split with a roster that's made in 6 weeks. It doesn't work out, and then you have another couple weeks during the transfer window to try to find a solution to your lackluster results, and then you throw together another roster, and it's like you show flashes in split 2, but then if you don't do anything with that second split, you have no other opportunities to do anything. Like a perfect example was Shopify. If Shopify had an entire other split with that Reddles 2-piece wavy roster, I think that they would have been able to do a lot better at Worlds, instead of just having that be their rookie LAN, as well as just being a roster that had, less than a month to prepare and one single event to play with together. So it's going to be interesting to see how the season starts off and what rosters we see come out of it, and kind of see how the depth of each region is affected because of this really short turnaround.
Absolutely. And I think for me, not alone of these states interferes a lot of serial stuff. The Esports World Cup in Riyadh happened a couple months ago, and now there's the FIFA E World Cup happening in Riyadh in November. That event's now in jeopardy because of these RLCS states. Will we see the top players play for the national teams at Riyadh, because they have RLCS to prepare for? So my belief is that a lot of these players will not be playing for the national teams at the highest level. which will hurt that EWC event in Riyadh. I don't think we're going to see a lot of these top players play for their national teams. Like we're not going to get to see this NRG roster play for Team USA for a second straight year, which is disappointing because we want to see these top players play on the national teams. I think that'd be great. With the United States having a very deep pool of talent, but again, I think these players should prioritize RLCS, and I don't think we're going to get to see a lot of these players that compete at the highest level play for their national teams.
Yeah, that was another big kind of issue. I know that also the same organizers behind the EWC are doing the Esports Club World or Club Cup next year. I think it's the ECC, which is supposed to be basically just FIFA E, but you don't need the federation, the football federation of each country to buy into it. So I could understand why players would want to focus on RLCS over representing their country, especially for Team USA, because honestly, FIFA E is not turning out to be the event that we expected it to be, because we have no Canada, we have no Spain, we have no Brazil to my knowledge. We don't have. It's basically USA and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Those are the only top two teams that are going to be in there, and then we have a bunch of Saharan African countries. We have a bunch of Eastern European countries.
Is France in there too?
What country?
Is France competing?
I don't think that France accepted their invitation, or they didn't.
Germany and Italy are usually pretty good as well, but I don't know.
But even at that, like you're missing Canada, you're missing France, you're missing Spain, you're missing Brazil. Like so many other countries that were like real contenders at the last FIFA E aren't making it back. So FIFA E isn't turning out to be the competition that we thought it would be. I'm much more okay with the concept of the Esports Club World Cup, where it's like, hey, if you have a team and you can make it through a qualifier, you can come down to Riyadh and compete, have it be this giant thing. Because I don't know if you remember back in, I believe it was 21-22, the Overwatch World Cup, where they had like every country you could think of. Like it basically was, if you can find a 5-stack that can play Overwatch and make it through a couple rounds of a qualifier, you make it to that LAN. And they had like the most random countries there, but it was a cool experience for those players who would never have a LAN experience to go to this gigantic international LAN and play with some of the best and play against some of the best in their respective esport. And I think that that's what the Esports Club Cup is going to be much more like, and what FIFA E should have been, because you got a bunch of geriatric old men running these football federations that know nothing about esports, and the ones that do see it as a good value proposition for players to go represent their country. We see with Spain how Spain didn't even get their own jerseys. They had to pay for their own jerseys, and they hadn't received payment from the football federation yet. They withheld all the earnings from their trip to Riyadh. So it's just not a good look. I think that FIFA E having to have the FIFA like branding and the FIFA affiliation with the teams that go, I think that was what kind of doomed it, because I don't see how they're able to bounce back, especially with such a big competitor coming next year with EWC now running their own version of it. So I respect I respect wanting to play for your country, but I also understand not doing it and focusing on pro play when you have such a quick turnaround, and also with the quality of competition not being that of your traditional international LAN, where it's basically going to be a USA versus KSA grand finals, and everyone else just kind of gets beaten up because they're not at the same level as NRG or Team Falcons.
Yeah, I think that event in 2026 is kind of how it should have been done from the beginning. Because I think, I think every country should have first off an open qualifier to determine the national team. And then I think these countries should be put into pools to determine who goes to LAN. And I think that's the proper way to do it, and for every team to have a chance to compete with their own national team at the highest level. But now with RLCS, having dates prioritized, obviously, not let alone you get to build your national team and whatever, and do what you need to do to get to Riyadh. You have to go there. That sleep schedule coming back is going to kill these players mentally.
Yep.
And so, and let alone they also have to deal with RLCS happening all at the same time. So I don't think we're gonna get to see a lot of these, high end players playing at that event, which is disappointing. But moving along, we've yapped about RLCS way too much. But nonetheless, back to CCS. It's been quite the last couple days with RLCS and everything. So bear with us. But it's a lot of changes are coming, and I just wish that this all would have been communicated a lot earlier.
Yeah, agreed.
But we live with the punches and got to keep rolling. But it sucks that it took this long, and I think it should have been announced at Major Two, or just let alone a bigger announcement that doesn't have to be at a land. It just should have been announced a lot sooner, so people like me can plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree that like if you're gonna have it be this soon, it should have been at a minimum at least before EWC. Like make some type of press release about it. Like just give us the dates. You don't have to give us all the details. Give us the Paris announcement at Worlds and make that hype and announce the roster restrictions with the 2/3 rule and
That's a big
give us
change.
yeah, that was massive. I was a big fan of that.
That's the only
But
thing I will say. You know what? You did a great job, Blast. That's the number. That's the only thing I will say. I'll give them props for.
yeah, give us dates. Give us dates before, like well beforehand, so that people can start to prepare. Give us details at the land to get us hype about the season. I will stand by that. That's how they should have handled it.
Yeah, I mean, it's I know it's tough probably on their end to plan all this and book facilities and book lands and everything, but I think something like this again, it just should have been announced sooner. I don't know if it's could have been done any sooner. I don't know how long all this takes to do. I'm sure it takes a long time, but from my
Mhm.
understanding, I don't know if it's still done this way. But RLCS is usually planned a year in advance, and so I don't know once since Blast is taking over if it's still that way. I just know how it used to be. They'd always plan a full year in advance on these lands, and that was only when Worlds is on land. Everything else is online, so I don't. It's probably way different now. But again, I just wish for earlier communication. But moving along to like the standings and key games this week. I mean, we talked a lot about the Power Four and CCS already, and with the conference tournament change, these league play matches matter a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting to with like the with the SEC in particular. Like again, I think that Florida and Missouri are kind of your top dogs, but going into this, I figured that there would have been a pretty solid like, hey, here's your 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seating. Now it's just kind of a toss up outside of that. It's going to be very interesting to see how things roll out and roll into the next week. And in particular, you're going to have some big games for a lot of the teams in the SEC, particularly Oklahoma and Alabama. I know that on paper, that Oklahoma team should be blowing that Alabama team out of the water, but Alabama is one of those teams that can get scrappy wins, and I think that them having kind of a disappointing week one, they're going to be a tough opponent. So again, I think that there's going to be going into week two, there's going to be some of these teams that started off hot. They went 6-1, 6-0, but they're going to have to continue to play like that because seeding matters. So every team that started out with 0-1 or 0-2 or 1-1, they're going to be fighting for that next win, those next two wins throughout the next week to improve their ranking. Um, so yeah, there's going to be a lot of. I feel like there's going to be a lot of seeding mix up going into week two, and we're going to see some of these underdogs take some key victories to boost their stock.
Yeah, I think in the SEC, it's going to be Missouri 1, A&M 2, Florida 3, because Florida plays Missouri, so one of them has to lose. And then 4 will be
Mhm.
South Carolina. And I think A&M has lucked out a lot in CCS schedule-wise. Last season they didn't play Florida. Um, but this season, they don't play Florida, Missouri, or Tennessee. I don't know how I let that happen, but they don't play any of the top. The only top team they played is South Carolina, and they smoked them last week. So they've gotten through probably arguably the best team already on their schedule because at this point, Tennessee with Jober back in the roster is obviously scary, but I do think South
Mhm.
Carolina right now has a slight edge over the Volunteers. That should be. I don't even know if they play each other. I think they do. Hopefully, I have that game on the schedule. Let me double check real quick. Let's see. Do they play? They do not play each other. But I'd give the odds to South Carolina in that one. But the SEC is going to be fun to watch, and I think these conference tournaments are about to be pure insanity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, I think that with seeding mattering more and having hopefully some parity as we see as the season goes on. I think especially with the results kicking off the week with Michigan State taking the game 5 win over Indiana, we're going to see results like that pop up in the bracket as well. And with the new bracket styles, it's going to throw a big wrench into a lot of people's bids for the national championship. So I'm really excited to see how this season kind of unfolds. Because again, it's you're not necessarily guaranteed safety if you come out as number one. Yeah, you're gonna have the best shot at it, but uh, there's gonna be plenty of upsets throughout brackets. And you know, if a team makes that Cinderella run, I think that this kind of new format for the conference championships is going to be beneficial to teams that play hot. And I think that the teams that have buys and are kind of waiting, especially in the gauntlet style brackets, if you're a team that's waiting till round 3 and there's an underdog that's rolling through opponents, that may be your season there. If if you are a team like Texas A&M for sake, like you said, they don't have the best strength of schedule. If you get rolled by an on fire Alabama team that rolls through the first 2-3 rounds of their bracket and you get steamrolled, that might be your season. You may not have a strong enough case to make it a national play. So I'm very excited to not just see some more parity coming out of week 2, because I think historically it's been whoever starts off the season undefeated kind of remains that way, or they may drop one of their 2 games and split the week. But I think that we're going to see a lot of big upsets. I think we're going to see a lot of parity going into week 2, because I think that these teams realize that if they want to stay competitive, they're going to need to actually care about their seeding and their game diff. So I think that we're going to see a really good week of Rocket League in store for us here for week 2 of conference play.
Yeah, I would agree. I think going into week 3 of a conference week 3 of the season, week 2 of conference play. I mean, again, you look at the American Gauntlet bracket. I mean, the top 2 teams out of I think it's like 11 or 12 maybe, and those top 2 teams get to skip the first 3 rounds. They get to go straight to the semifinals. And again, a team could make a run and playoff momentum. Our assumption obviously is Wichita State and Charlotte at 1 and 2 will get to skip the first 3 rounds of the American tournament. But you never know. We'll have to wait and see how the season progresses. But for me, like, this is a change I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm excited to get to see it play out. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to give these lower level teams a chance to play some postseason CCS games and see how that goes. And everything this time is best of 7. There's no more best of 5s in the conference tournaments, and I think that also kind of amps up the pressure of some of these series and gives an underdog a chance to make a run. So I'm excited to see that play out, but we're still a couple weeks away from that coming to fruition. But I think it's an exciting change. I think it's going to be fun to look at when it's all said and done and see what happened. But nonetheless, I think it's going to be put really a big implication on these things to earn, a buy or a double buy or a triple buy for some of these gauntlet brackets or, the bigger brackets like the Power 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, every week is going to matter. Every game is going to matter. If you have, if you have one week that is slightly worse than the opponent behind you and you end up with a worse game diff, that can change your entire postseason. How that run looks, how your matchups look. So I think that, again, there's going to be a lot of parity here. We're going to see the top dogs make their return, but I think that we're in store for very, very competitive postseason play from all of the teams that make it through. And we're bound to see some Cinderella runs. We see it in the national championship bracket every single time. There's 1 to 2 teams that have a crazy round 1, a crazy round 2. They make a kind of deep run for their seeding, and it's really impressive. I think that because of how frequently we see that in national play, when it's opponents that you're familiar with, when it's teams that, regionally speaking, you're probably scrimming with because you're in the same area, you have a relationship with them, and then there's familiarity there. We're going to see big time upsets with a lot of these teams. And I'm here for it. I'm here for as much content as we can possibly have, and like truly just having the best team on the day make it through. It's not just, the best team in the bracket got the cupcake run and they fought out a tough game 6 victory, and they made it through with an auto bid. It's truly going to be whoever is better on the day, and I think that is what's going to increase the competitiveness of the national bracket, as well as if it's truly the best teams making it through and not just the highest rated or the best prepared. It just comes down to what you put on the field and who's better on the sticks. I think that's going to be a really fun season ahead. But like you said, we still got some weeks ahead. But I think that those are going to be some very entertaining weeks in between now and then.
And also like these teams that get double buys, I mean, they get a full week off. They don't have to play a single game that first week of the conference tournament. So that's maybe a good break week. Some teams might prefer that to have week off to prepare. I mean, I don't know how many of these teams only play in CCS. I'm sure a lot of these teams also play elsewhere, so it's a little bit low pressure. Don't have to play so many games, but it should benefit these teams that earn these double buys. Even the buys only having to play that back half of the first week. So getting to skip around is obviously big, and you're one step closer to that national tournament. So again, these regular season games matter a lot more. It's not okay, play through the regular season, make your conference tournament, and you're middle of the pack 4 or 5, go make an upset happen, win a round, and you're in the national tournament. Now it's a lot more high pressure. You've got to be able to perform at the biggest stage if you're going to play the CCS championships, and I think this committee is going to get it done right here in the fall.
Man, I hope so. We got a lot of pressure. I feel like every time there's a bracket announced for the national championship, there's at least a handful of teams that it's like they have a case to be made, but the teams that made it in ahead of them had a slightly better case, and it's always so tough, even with the expanded format to go into 64 teams. Like it feels like there are truly 70 or so teams that could make a national championship bracket, but it all comes down to who had a better strength of schedule, who had a better run through those playoffs. But I think that now with the new format for the conference championships, it's going to be a little bit easier to make some of those arguments for teams making it in versus out, because it's going, like you said, it's going to be higher pressure, it's going to be higher stakes, it's going to be more competitive throughout these brackets. So it's not going to be, like you said, you're a 4 or 5 seed, you have one upset because you caught a team lacking 1 week, and then you make your bid in because that looks like it's so impressive. And you ended up going 4-2 in regular season, so you had a winning record and you got a conference championship win, and that was the criteria to make it in. I think that every team is going to have to fight through their conference championship brackets and make an actual deep run, or win, be the runner up, in addition to having a good regular season to really show their medal and have their bid in for the national championship bracket.
Yeah, there's always been a good bit of discourse over the selection process and who's been in and who's been out in the past, and that's always expected to happen. You're never going to please everybody. It's just part of being on a ranking, on a selection committee, that you're just not going to be able to please everybody. I mean, again, look at the job of the NCAA men's basketball committee in the last March Madness. The committee chair was the athletic director of North Carolina, who got the last at large. That pissed everybody off. And have it so, North Carolina played outstanding in that tournament, but you're never going to please everybody. There's always going to be questions. There's always going to be concerns, and so you can't please everybody. And I think that's something that this committee has to take into account. But it's tough. All of us have a lot of differing opinions on teams and where people stand. So it's kind of hard to come down to one consensus thought of where people are. But this season, after the regular season's over, so on that Monday of our podcast, of the first week of the conference tournaments, the committee will have a full bracket of 64 put together prior to the conference tournaments beginning. So we'll showcase that bracket as to what right now in that point of time that the bracket that we believe is to be true going into the conference tournaments before all of that madness starts. But that's a change we'll be making here in the fall, and hopefully we get it done right. There will also be a time for questions from chat to go over our thought process as a committee. Everybody will be here at the podcast for that episode. And also, Jonas and I used to do a segment towards the back half of the season where we would, put together a graphic of our thoughts on what the field of 64 should look like. And I don't know if I still have that graphic on my computer. I don't think I can show it, but it was we had teams we had it split up by conferences on the graphic, and we kind of just went through and had teams that we were for sure locked in the bracket. We were teams that were probably going to get in, and teams that were probably going to be left out, or teams that are on the bubble. So we'll probably end up doing that again with me and you this time, as Jonas is not here anymore. But in early this morning, to close things off here, because we're about on the top of the hour now, but we put out that map sheet finally. I got annoyed waiting for a graphic, so I just decided fuck it, I'm gonna tweet it myself. And so 178 teams, a CCS record here in the fall. I'm super excited, super stoked to build off of year 3. 178 teams is no joke. Putting this all together took forever, and it's going to be an exciting year ahead. I'm super excited to build on to year 4 and hopefully get this number up to 200.
Yeah, I think 200 is definitely just. I mean, it's bound to happen, especially with how much love the CCS has been getting and how active schools have been. I think that that's going to catch the eyes of a lot of schools that aren't already in here. But yeah, to iterate kind of the sentiment that Taquito put out there when you initially tweeted this out, this is one of the coolest graphics in collegiate Rocket League, in collegiate esports. I think that it's much appreciated. I think everyone finds it like the one of the coolest things that a league could do is to have these kind of conquest maps and the territories. And I think that it's absolutely insane that we have 170 schools on this map right now.
Yeah, that graphic, that map probably took a solid, I'd say like 12 hours maybe of sitting down and working on.
Oh my God.
It gets faster every semester because I can go off of a certain area being okay. No, there's no new schools in the area. I don't have to recalculate anything, so it's easy to just fill it all in. But some of these places, you have a new school or someone drops, and I don't have a past reference to go off of when that school doesn't play, so I have to recalculate it all, and it just takes forever, which is unfortunate and kind of annoying. But you know what? It's worth it in the end. And Logo, to answer your question. Yep. Power rankings hopefully will be out tomorrow. Nobody made a list, so I can't really. I made a list, but I can't really put out my own list because that's bias. Well, it get called bias because it's just my own list. I mean, I can read off my list right now if you guys really want me to, but yeah, there's no collective list because no one made a list. I'll send my list in chat. Hold on. I'll just send it in chat.
I was gonna say you're telling me that at the end of it you don't just collect all the lists and then put your list out there anyways.
Right. I'll just put my list in chat. Oh, hold on. Oh, that's weird. Okay, there's the top 22. I hit a limit. There's 25. Yeah, that was my list. That's just my thoughts. And as I've said, I know Wichita State's been like number 2. I'm not ranking them that high because I'm ranking it based off the fact that it's Boone Mason Solus. I'm not going to rank them based off the fact that they're going to play with Knight for one series prior to the tournament. I think that's unfair and injustice to the system. I don't think a team should be ranked based off one result with a different player. But nonetheless, I think this list is my current thoughts right now. There's probably a couple teams that are maybe a little too high. Yeah, Akron did go to 5 with NIU, but Akron is Akron. They've won 3 straight national titles. They've had a couple scares, but they always find a way to win. I don't think you can discredit Akron for the job they've done. They also swept Missouri last week, which is a hell of a roster. It's also tough, though, to put together a list of 178 schools and compile that down to 25. It's difficult, and it takes time sifting through results and looking at stuff. So this is my current thought right now, but I might change it later. But this is my current thought.
I think the biggest thing is the Wichita State down to 9. I think that is, even with the roster that they have, that is a very accurate placement of where they'll probably end up. Kind of in just overall seeding. If you were to release a seeding for the top 64, I think that they are a top 10 opponent. So I think that that's not any disrespect to the roster. Although people might see that just because we know that it's a different roster, they're going from 2 all the way down to 9. You're still a top 10 team, and I think that that's a very accurate placement for them. Especially with them season before last, they took a huge win over UNC Charlotte, who it was a UNC Charlotte team that I know in last
streamed that.
season, last season, and then in season
It was
4,
2 seasons
there have
ago.
been there's been excuses for UNCC in their conference championship. I know in season 4 it was like, oh well, one of their players just got back from vacation and they something, they weren't at full strength, and it's like, okay, fair enough. But the other team did win. And then I know last season in the summer, they were without Bala for their loss against Winthrop in the national championship, and then them taking an early exit. But
Bala was
Wichita
there.
State, Bala was there.
They were at full strength for that one.
Huh. I was told
I
that
think.
they
I could be wrong.
did not, that they had a sub in. But either way, there's been asterisks from people put on UNC Charlotte in their conference championships, and then also in the national championship. I think that Wichita State is the first opponent, at least in recent memory, that has gone to UNC Charlotte as UNC Charlotte being the 1 seed out of their conference and upset them. And they did it in game 7 too, or not game 7, game 5. Too as well. So them taking it the distance against UNC Charlotte, that was an amazing series. Like you said, I streamed that, and it was a insane game to watch unfold. So I think that skill wise, a ranking of 9 is totally fair for Wichita State. I feel other people will, argue with that, but we'll see.
I mean, it's still way too early to discuss conference champions. We'll discuss that later on in the semester as the season kind of gets underway. But I mean, there's a lot of conferences. I'll go through those kind of probably a week or two from now. We'll start going through those, but it's still early on. I don't want to get into that quite yet here in CCS, but we'll get into that eventually. There's a lot of good competition this fall. I think there's going to be a lot of conference tournaments that we're not really going to be too sure what we're going to expect to see happen. I think you mentioned earlier there's going to be a lot of upsets. I think I fully agree with that statement. Again, it's still too early to tell, but I think we're going to get a lot. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. And I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah. Again, I think that in terms of skill, in terms of depth of each conference, in terms of the new twists and turns from the new conference playoff structure, I think that this is going to be the most competitive season of CCS, and through non-conference and now into week 2, it's kind of shown that it's the most competitive that we've seen. I mean, to highlight it again, the Idaho win over NAU 3-1, that kind of sets the tone of what this season is going to be. It's going to be a team that goes in and they're at an opponent who is ranked. They're going to come in, they're going to be able to perform and upset teams, and I think that we're going to see a lot of those types of results through the conference championships, and it's going to make for a very interesting bracket come national championship.
Absolutely, yes. I'm excited. I think this fall, I really hope the committee gets it done right. I think hopefully we can see each other, ear to ear, and I think hopefully that it gets done the proper way this fall. And but again, there's always gonna be discourse. I think there's gonna be people that are pissed off, which is probably can't really escape that. It's probably going to happen, but hopefully it's limited. Hopefully, again, with the extended amount of games of the conference tournaments changing, it gives more games in the schedule and more of a broader field for the committee to evaluate. And so I think, we'll get a pretty good look prior to the conference tournaments, and I think that's kind of when we're going to start to see people kind of realize, okay, like, we got to, work harder, guys. Like, we need to either up our seating or we need to find our way into the field. And so I think, some of these teams are going to start to realize, like, okay, man, like, we got to lock in, guys. Like, our season is one game away from being over. So, it's life or death at that point in the conference tournament. It's either, you win and keep moving on and try to play your way into the CCS championships, or you lose and your season's done just like that in one night.
Yeah. Again, I think that starting next week, when we see some of these some of the more some of these upsets kind of come out and become more of a regular thing week to week, I think that's when teams are going to start to wake up. After week 2, I think that we're going to hit kind of our stride with a lot of these teams, where the lower seeds going into it, they're going to not just be like, we can scrape by going 3-3 or 4-3 in regular season and get a middle of the pack seed, and will probably end up making it through and play for the full semester. I think that, when a team goes 1-2 to start off the season, they're going to kind of wake up and go, hey, another week like this, and we may have the worst seeding possible going into a conference championship, and we need to find a way to turn things around and start playing more competitively. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for every week to count. I think that league play structure, leagues like this, that every week should count. Every game should matter. And I think that with the new postseason structure, a lot of teams are going to kind of wake up to that idea as well, and be like, oh yeah, a sweep versus a game 4 against an opponent that's higher seeded than me actually does make a big difference. So we're going to try to push this the distance and be a lot more competitive with it.
Yeah, I think, back in the first year of CCS, back in 2023, I think it was 2023 to 2024 school year, back in the first 3 seasons, the first 2 seasons, I'd say, there was, you know what, only really season 2, and I guess kind of season 3, but not really. There was some complaints about single elimination and how, people don't like it, but I think now people have embraced it and the pressure of what it brings to the competition. Because there are complaints that it's a good team that loses early and like their season could be done, or like it f's them over, or like this and that, or
That's
like
the point.
but the reason is just win. If you're like, I don't understand. I don't get the complaints. And I know CCS is different from everybody else. Everybody else says double elim. I get it. I get it. Double elim's fun. It's cool. Whatever. You get a second chance. But that's not what I'm trying to do here. That's not the goal I'm trying to achieve with CCS. And I don't want to get into too many of that, because I'm trying to work a lot behind the scenes here to prepare for next year and prepare for the years to come, and what I want to bring this league to and what I want to accomplish with it. But it's tough, doing single elim, because you see a good team lose early, and that could be their season GG in one night, or their tournament seed and killed in one night, going from a high seed to a low seed because you lost really early on in the conference tournament. And there's always been some complaints about single elim and how some people don't like it because of the pressure, and because it could really fuck them over because of one result. And I think that makes it all the more important to win. I think it also makes championships even more exciting, because it's win or go home from the get-go. And it happened last season. We saw a 1 seed lose in the first round. You don't see that anywhere else. It's one chance. One chance is one chance, and if you lose, you're done. And look at what that's brought to the league, and look at what the numbers have been, and look at our Twitter. Look at what these fans have brought to the teams because of these upset wins or these big time games on our Twitch channel. And look at what it's done. It's crazy. It's outstanding. And look what Louisiana Tech has done last year. Brought their athletics account, brought their athletic directors, and got their vision into CCS. Look at what NIU did in the tournament. Beat Florida #1 seed in the tournament, number 3 overall. They lit the tower. They got their program behind us. I mean, it's cool to see what the change has done. And bring a single elim is fun. It brings out the best in people.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Like, imagine if other college sports did double elim brackets, how lackluster that would be. It defeats the whole point of a Cinderella run. I'm a very big advocate, not just because CCS follows the structure of traditional college sports, but because I feel like that breeds competition. Like you said, just win. If you really are that good, if you're this high of a seed and you've had this good of a season and you're that good of a team, just win. It's that simple. And I know, and I understand there's off nights, but just like real sports, if your stud corner shooter, if your little 6'3" white boy on the wing can't hit his shots, you lose the game. You just gotta hit your shots, play your game, and just win. And if you're not cut out for that night, it just wasn't your night. You don't get any do-overs. The better team won. And that's all it is the better team on each given match, each given day, is able to progress further. And I think that is what is the best thing about this, is the single elimination. I don't get how you could look at the structure and want to, I could understand, good teams if they lose early because everyone's PC blew up and they have to FF. I understand how that's disappointing, but again, it's just life sometimes. Sometimes stuff happens and you don't get to make that run. But when it comes down to a team just getting legitimately beat out by a lower seed, like what we saw with NIU and Florida in the summer, when it was just the better team won that game, won that series, that is the best thing that you could ask for, is to watch the best team progress further and make these runs and have these storylines of these underdogs taking down the top teams. And it's what makes the content here for the league as well. Like this is why casters like us and the casting team behind us love to see is the upset wins, and what the fans love to see too. And that's kind of the spirit of what collegiate sports and esports should be, is the better team won on that day, in that game, in that series, and you can craft a story out of it. It's all about entertainment. It's all about watching these players play the best and the best players moving on and not having that second life. And that should add to the stakes of why you should just come out and, like you said, just win. You have the stakes, you have the pressure, perform under the pressure and show that you truly are the better team. And if you don't, then you weren't the better team at that time.
Yeah.
You weren't cut out for the moment.
I think one of the coolest things that's ever happened in CCS was back in season 3. I mean, for those of you guys that were here, everybody knows the story of Nebraska was special last summer or 2 summers ago. I mean, they were, everybody said, okay, like their Big Ten group, like it was weak. Like they didn't have, it was the Big Ten West is horrible. 2 summers ago, it was like Iowa, UCLA before they had their good roster, Northwestern, Oregon, which Oregon was great, but Oregon forfeited Nebraska in the regular season, so that was an easy free win for Nebraska. But then they go in the conference tournament. This team was highly doubted. Their first round game was Illinois. They slammed Illinois. Hype started to build around this team. They go to the semifinals. They trail Purdue, number 2 Purdue, 0-3. Going into game 4, they pulled off the first ever best 7 reverse sweep. That reverse sweep made national news. Channel 8 ABC News in Omaha had a article at a Lincoln News. It made national television out in Omaha, Nebraska. You could hear Jonas and I casting on TV, which is outstanding to listen back and watch to. That was pretty cool. Then Nebraska lost in Game 7 to Oregon in the Big Ten tournament final. They made it to the round of 16 in the CCS championships. That story started to build the hype at CCS in Nebraska, and it's been really cool to see schools embrace it, like we got to watch at LA Tech last year and NIU in the summer.
Yeah, it's great. And again, I think that not only seeing the double or the single elim be just the better team winning, but again, it's those storylines. It's building the hype. It's getting the fan interest. It's getting the students involved. It's getting the programs involved. When you pull off these big wins, because again, at the end of the day, if you're not the better team, you don't win. And if you only get one shot at that, you better make that shot count. Because if you're supposed to be the better team, show it and prove it. And I love seeing all these different storylines that emerge through each season, whether it's the story of the underdog, the Cinderella runs, or it's just pure dominance like what we've seen from Akron. Whatever side of the coin you like to focus on, you're going to have something to pay attention to every single season here for CCS.
Yeah, absolutely, you are. Thinking of the storylines build themselves, and it puts pressure on these teams that pull off a stunning upset to start winning and start performing at a higher level because of one result. I think some teams deal well with that pressure, some teams don't. And it's interesting and exciting to watch it all unfold, and hopefully we have some moments like that together this year, Sandra, where we get to make national news somewhere. But it's always interesting and it's cool to see it all happen. And shout out to all the athletic department at Louisiana Tech University for all this support the last year, and the fans of Northern Illinois. I mean, their whole football team, their football account reposted that post, and their quarterback engaged with that post. I mean, it's cool to watch those kinds of things happen. And what a week it's been, and what a season I think we're about to have. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm super excited for what's gonna happen this fall.
Very excited. This is gonna be the best one yet. And again, I think that everything that you've set up behind the scenes to make this league kind of unfold how I think it's going to for the fall, I think it's going to make it that much better. It's going to make it that much more competitive, and it's going to be a really fun season ahead of us. And we still have, I know it seems like a really short period of time before we end up in conference and national championship and all that, but we still got a ways to go. We still got some great banger weeks of conference play ahead of us, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Hopefully so. Hopefully streams are back to normal regular scheduled programming this week. It's been quite a little bit of a lackluster week of productions crew-wise. The availability's been a little rough, but hopefully things get better going forward. As I'm sure Summer and I will be back with some calls hopefully this week. But we'll again, it's going to be an exciting season. I'm excited to keep building off of what we've got here at CCS and Thank you guys for tuning in to episode 2 of the Conference Call After Dark podcast. I'm Brady. Final thoughts as we close down what the last couple of days of CCS has been.
Oh man, it's just been a whole lot of fun. I love seeing the upset wins. I hope to see more of them. I really am going to be also keeping my eye on the Mountain West. I know we didn't talk about it, but San Jose State kind of looking like they might jump Air Force as kind of that other top dog out there in the Mountain West. LA Tech has been killing it too to start off the regular season. There's going to be a lot of great storylines. So keep your eyes peeled for streams coming this week, because there's going to be a lot of great action coming up for week 3 of CCS season 7.
And Greg Kenny joining the Mountain West too. This year is going to be exciting to watch too, alongside Wazoo, San Jose State, and San Diego State, as those 4 teams will kind of go head to head for number 1. But nonetheless, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow for more CCS Week 3 action. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all later.